speaking and singing voice of the King of the Apes.
I'm tired of walking around. Oh, I want to be like you.
He rests here in his home of New Orleans at Metairie Cemetery. In the Jungle Book, we also hear the legendary Phil Harris as the lovable bear, Baloo.
All you gotta do is all the bare necessities.
You can also hear that deep, resonant voice in the Aristocats as O'Malley and as Little John in Robin Hood.
Something, Robin, I was just wondering. Are we good guys or bad guys? You know, are robbing the rich to feed the poor?
Harris's dolphin-shaped urn rests here at Forest Lawn in Cathedral City. The next actor to play Baloo was Ed Gilbert, who we find here at Eternal Valley Memorial Park in Santa Clarita. For 90s kids like me, we remember Gilbert as the voice of Baloo in the 90s TV series, Tailspin.
We'll tell her we were jackpot air pirates.
Baloo, you're that one yesterday.
There we were, outnumbered a jillion to one. We were dodging.
Rewinding back to the 70s, in 1973, Disney made their adaptation of Robin Hood. We're in Alabama now, at Maxwell Chapel United Methodist Church, where rests Maxwell Butler, better known as Cat. The comedic actor who had joked that his voice only made it halfway through puberty was perfect as the loathsome Sheriff of Nottingham.
If you shoot half as good as you blabbermouth, you're better than Robin Hood.
He also voiced Napoleon in the Aristocats, Chief in Fox and the Hound, and Luke in The Rescuers. Back in SoCal, we're at San Fernando Mission Cemetery, where we find Candy Candido. His was that unique, deep, gravel voice you heard in a number of animated films of this era, including as Captain of the Guard in Robin Hood.
The tournament of the Golden Arrow will now begin.
He was also the Indian chief in Peter Pan, Fidget in The Great Mouse Detective, and Brutus and Nero in The Rescuers. Speaking of The Rescuers, let's head back to Westwood Village Memorial Park to find the actress who voiced Miss Bianca in The Rescuers. Ava Gabor, whose distinctive accent can also be heard as Lisa Douglas in Green Acres, voiced Miss Bianca in both The Rescuers and The Rescuers Down the Lane.
Oh, I do it all the time, darling. Now, come on. Stop worrying.
She was also the voice of Duchess in The Aristocats. One of Ava Gabor's co-stars in The Aristocats can be found back at Forest Lawn, Hollywood. Here lies Scatman Crothers, who is the voice of the greatest cat of them all, Scat Cat.
Those against the weekend. Knows where is that?
Earlier, we visited the narrator of The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Here at Woodlawn Cemetery in Santa Monica, in the mausoleum, we find the crypt of Hal Smith. The beloved actor known for playing Otis in The Andy Griffith Show was the voice of Owl in Winnie the Pooh.
Someone has pasted Piglet on my window. Well, who do? This is a surprise.
We've reached the 90s now, and the era of Disney's Renaissance, in what is considered one of the greatest animated films ever, Beauty and the Beast. At Forest Lawn in the Hollywood Hills, we find Tony Jay, a man whose deep, menacing voice was perfect for villains like Monsieur Dark.
Oh, that is despicable. I love it.
Years later, he would voice Frollo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Beauty and the Beast took its stylistic cues from Broadway musicals, and so who better to play a talking candelabra named Lumiere than a leading man of the Broadway musical, Jerry Orbach.
So beautiful, Mother. She falls in love with you, and boom, the spell is broken.
He would reprise the role wherever Lumiere appeared until his death in 2000. Jerry Orbach rests here in the mausoleum at Trinity Church Cemetery in New York. Carrie Fisher. She was our princess, loved by millions the world over for her role as Leia in the Star Wars series of films. She was no damsel in distress or shrinking violet, for Princess Leia was strong, feisty, intelligent, and stood her own with the boys. She first played the role in 1977's Star Wars, followed by the rest of the original trilogy, before reprising the role some 30 years later in The Force Awakens.
Ray? May the force be with you.
Tragically, Carrie died just after finishing filming her scenes for The Last Jedi. She rests here at Forest Lawn in Hollywood Hills with her mother, actress Debbie Reynolds, who died one day later. Carrie was named a Disney legend in 2017. In the 1990s, Disney teamed up with Pixar to produce 3D computer animated films, the first of which was Toy Story in 1995. For the voice of a cynical Mr. Potato Head, Disney Pixar called on the acerbic talents of insult comic Mr. Warmth, Don Rickles.
Hey, Ham, look, I'm Picasso. I don't get it. You uncultured swine.
He played Mr. Potato Head in all 4 Toy Story films, though having passed away in 2017 before recording lines for Toy Story 4, filmmakers had to use archive recordings of Mr. Rickles. He rests here at Mount Sinai Memorial Park in Los Angeles. Let's turn back the clock a bit and shift focus to Disney's live action. And Disney's first live action feature comedy would also feature its first Disney legend. Fred McMurray starred in the 1959 film The Shaggy Dog.
Ronnie, come on up now, it's getting late.
Okay, Pop.
Fred would appear in 7 Disney features in all, including The Absent-Minded Professor and Son of Flubber. He was the very first individual honored as a Disney legend in 1987, and rests here in the mausoleum at Holy Cross in Culver City. The biggest star of Disney television in the 50s can be found here at Santa Barbara Cemetery. Here lies Fess Parker, better known to every kid in the 50s as Davy Crockett. He appeared as the king of the wild frontier in the magical world of Disney beginning in 1954, becoming an instant hit.
How'd you kill that brute?
With the knife? I was figuring on grinding to death, but this here stumble-footed major has come along and busted up my concentrate.
He even had a gold record for Ballad of Davy Crockett. Other Disney productions Parker starred in include Old Yeller. He was named a Disney legend in 1991. The coonskin cap that appears here on his mark was all the rage with the kids of the 50s. If 50s kids weren't wearing their coonskin caps, they may well have been wearing Mickey ears, thanks to the popular TV show The Mickey Mouse Club, a variety show that first aired in 1955. We're at Forest Lawn in the Hollywood Hills, where we find the head Mouseketeer, the adult host of the show, Jimmy Dog.
Today is the day that is filled with surprises. Nobody knows what's gonna happen.
Not only did he host as Master of Ceremonies, but Jimmy Dodd also wrote many of the songs for the show, including the iconic opening theme. He was named a Disney legend in 1992. At the top of the hill, the courts of remembrance here at Forest Lawn. Along this wall of crypts, we find a man lovingly known as the Babe Ruth of theater. This is Roy Williams. He began at Disney as an artist and gag man, but Disney felt his large stature and gentle demeanor would make him perfect as an adult Mouseketeer in the Mickey Mouse Club, bestowing on him the nickname featured here on the script.
Hey, what's going on here?
Roy is also responsible for having designed the mouse ears that have become synonymous with both the Mickey Mouse Club and Disney theme parks. He was inspired after seeing Mickey take his ears off like a cat in 1929's The Carnival Kid. Williams was named a Disney legend in 1992.
Sorry, Cease.
At Disney, many of the young artists would rise in the ranks to eventually helm Disney projects as directors, writers, producers, etc. Take Hamilton Lusk, for example, who rests here in the Great Mausoleum of Forest Lawn, Glendale. His career began at Disney in the 30s, becoming the first animator cast by Disney for his ambitious new project, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. As supervising animator, Lusk was responsible for Snow White herself. After the success of Snow White, Ham, as he was known, turned his career to directing. He would direct or direct many of Disney's features to follow, including Pinocchio, Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, and more. And for his work directing the cartoon sequences of Mary Poppins, Ham Lusk earned an Oscar. He was named a Disney legend in 1999. Also here at Forest Lawn, Glendale, in the dawn of tomorrow, we find Grant. His early work as an artist at Disney includes the design of the evil queen in Snow White. Grant would go on to become one of Disney's great storymen, writing and developing movies like Fantasia, Dumbo, and Lady and the Tramp. The character of Lady was inspired by his own English spaniel named Lady. Grant left the studio in 1949 but would return 40 years later, in 1989, to contribute visual and story development for films like Beauty and the Beast, Pocahontas, Hercules, and more. He lived to be 96 and was named a Disney legend in 1992. Over now to Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills, we find Jack Hanna. He's known for his work on Disney's short films, first as a writer, then as a director, including most of the post-war Donald Duck cartoons. Hanna is often credited for helping create the personality of the animated version of Donald Duck in this era. He also directed the fan favorite Lambert the Sheepish Lion. Later, he would move into television, writing and directing for the magical world of Disney. Jack Hanna was named a Disney legend in 1992. Just up the road, in this same section, across the street from the Red Church, we find Bill Peet, whose grave features woodland creatures not unlike those seen at Bambi. He joined Disney as an animator in the late 30s, but quickly developed as a leading story. He was a writer on classics like Cinderella,
I was like,
Alice in
what the hell can I put these in?
He would go on to be the sole
like,
developer of
yeah,
Monty
very
Dalmatians and The
everything.
Sword in the Stone, which, in
Yeah,
addition to
you're
writing,
right.
he also
Like
led
the
character
coffee
design and
shop.
performance. Bill Peet was named a Disney legend in
Sorry, sister,
1956.
about that. See you later.
Back to Forest Lawn, Glendale, this is Winston Hibler, another of the great storymen of early Disney. He wrote for films including The Adventures of Ichabod Crane and Mr. Toad, Alice in Wonderland, Sleeping Beauty, and Cinderella. When Disney began producing nature films, Hib, as he was known, was cast as narrator for his smooth voice. He was also a series producer on television for the magical world of Disney. Winston Hibler was named a Disney legend in 1992. Among those in the next generation of great storymen at Disney is Vance Gerry, who rests here at Mountain View Cemetery in Altadena. He began as a storyboard and layout artist at Disney before moving into the story department, writing for films like The Aristocats, Robin Hood, and The Great Mouse Detective. In later years, he went back to visual development, designing character films including Pocahontas, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Tarzan. We're back just feet from where Walt Disney is laid to rest. Here lies Bill Walsh. He was a producer who worked mainly on Disney's live-action features. He wrote and produced Disney's first live-action comedy, The Shaggy Dog, in 1959. And on television, he produced Davy Crockett and The Mickey Mouse Club. Walsh would receive 2 Oscar nominations in his career for both co-writing and co-producing Mary Poppins in 1964. Other films he produced include Bedknobs and Broomsticks and The Absent-Minded Professor. He was named a Disney legend in 1991. An oft-overlooked aspect of film production is sound, but it was sound that made Disney in those early years. We're at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, where rests William Garrity. He was an inventor and audio engineer who helped Disney record the sound for Steamboat Willie in 1928. He would be instrumental in the following years in making Disney's cartoons the most technically advanced, developing early sound for film, including stereo sound, which they called Fantasound. He won an honorary Academy Award for Fantasia for the outstanding contribution to the use of sound in motion pictures. Bill Garrity also developed the advanced multiplane camera for Disney, which gave animations a sense of depth through parallax, first used in the 1937 short The Old Mill, and also seen in fly-through village sequences in Pinocchio. He was named a Disney legend in 1999. Disney exploded onto the scene in 1928 with its release of Steamboat Willie. And as mentioned, it was the novelty of synchronized music and sound that made it so remarkable. Music would continue to play a central role in the rise of early Disney animation, particularly with the Silly Symphonies, short animations whimsically set to music. And to this very day, music is often an emotional part of Disney productions. It's taken an incredible lineup of composers and songwriters spanning multiple genres to pen the tunes that instantly transport us back to our childhoods. Let's meet a few of them. This is the Abbey of the Psalms at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where we find, high on the wall, the crypt of Carl Stalling. The prolific composer of hundreds of Looney Tunes and Merry Melody cartoons actually got his start with Disney, leading young Walt back in Kansas City. Walt would hire Carl Stalling to score early Mickey Mouse cartoons like Plain Crazy and Galloping Gaucho, subsequently naming him Disney's first music director. In addition to scoring Mickey shorts, Stalling would also write music for Silly Symphonies, a series he devised with the idea of crafting music before the animation, the first of which was the ever-popular Skeleton Dance. And here's a fun fact. The very first words spoken by Mickey Mouse were not actually voiced by Walt, but by Carl Stalling in 1929's The Carnival Kid. What were Mickey's first words? Hot dog. There's one tune that has become synonymous with Disney. Its signature tune, the main theme of Walt Disney Entertainment. We're at Valhalla Cemetery in the Mausoleum of the Resurrection. Here is the niche of Lee Harline. The Salt Lake City-born composer wrote the music for When You Wish Upon a Star.
When you wish upon a star.
The song was written for Pinocchio in 1940 and would be the first Disney song to win an Oscar, which Harline shared with lyricist Ned Washington. The score for Pinocchio earned Harline a second Oscar that year. The tune from When You Wish Upon a Star now opens just about every Disney movie playing over the castle logo. Harline also composed the music for Snow White and scored a number of silly symphonies, like The Grasshopper and the Ants and The Cookie Carnival. Such a humble resting place for a man whose music is known and loved by likely billions across the globe. Lee Harline was named a Disney legend in 2001. Many of Disney's early films had multiple composers. We're in the Freedom Mausoleum at Forest Lawn, Glendale, where rests Paul J. Smith. Along with Lee Harline and others, Smith wrote music for Disney's early films, including Snow White and Pinocchio, which earned him an Oscar. Smith earned 7 Oscar nominations in addition to his win for his Disney music, which also included The Three Caballeros and Cinderella. Live-action Disney films would follow, like The Shaggy Dog, The Parent Trap, and Pollyanna, as well as Disney's True Life Adventures. After his death in 1985, Paul Smith was laid to rest here with his mother, though his name is not on the niche. He was named a Disney legend in 1994. We leave LA for Ellensburg, Washington, and visit the Independent Order of Oddfellows Cemetery to find our next legendary Disney musician. This is where Oliver Wallace is laid to rest. Oliver Wallace teamed up with Paul Smith to score Cinderella in 1950, which would earn him an Oscar nomination. Before Cinderella, Wallace had written Oscar-winning music for Dumbo, including that acid trip of a song, Pink Elephants on Parade.
Look out, pink elephants on parade, here they come, hippity-hoppity.
Other feature animations include Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, and Lady and the Tramp. Wallace's skills were also called upon for films like The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, as well as Donald Duck's theme song in the 40s.
Who gets stuck with all of that luck? No one but Donald Duck.
Oliver Wallace was named a Disney legend in 2008. Back in LA, we're at Forest Lawn, Glendale. Here we find another of the great tunesmiths of early Disney, Frank Churchill. Frank is perhaps best known for penning the music to many of the songs that were featured in classic Disney films. He had a chart-topping hit with the song Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf in 1933, written for the Silly Symphony, The Three Little Pigs. Disney then brought Churchill onto his first animated feature, giving us those classic tunes, Whistle While You Work,
Just whistle while you work.
I Hope,
It's home from work we go.
Someday My Prince Will Come. Churchill would go on to win an Oscar for penning music for the film Dumbo, which included the song Baby Mine. Frank Churchill was named a Disney legend in 2001. This is Fir Hill Cemetery in Sandy, Oregon. In these grounds, we find the final resting place of George Bruns. He came to Disney in the 50s and found early success in Disney's pioneering television work. He had a hit writing the ballad of Davy Crockett, which would help launch the Davy Crockett craze in the 50s. He earned 4 Oscar nominations for his film work at Disney, for Babes in Toyland, Robin Hood, The Sword in the Stone, and for adapting Sleeping Beauty. And if you find yourself at Disneyland or Disney World singing Yo Ho, a pirate's life for me, you can thank George Bruns. He wrote the Pirate's Song with lyrics by Exitensi. George Bruns was named a Disney legend in 2001. We find ourselves now at Indian Hill Cemetery in Middletown, Connecticut. This is where Ali Rubel is laid to rest. He's remembered today for writing a song that is perhaps second only to When You Wish Upon a Star in its association with Disney, a song that perfectly encapsulates the buttery optimism of Disney. Zippity-doo-dah.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay.
The song was written by Rubel in 1946 with lyrics by Ray Gilbert for the film Song of the South. And though Song of the South is no longer shown, the song itself is enduring, even featured on the Disneyland ride Splash Mountain. It won Rubel and Gilbert the Oscar for Best Song and was ranked number 47 on AFI's list of top 100 tunes of American cinema. Many of the composers we've featured so far team up with great lyricists to put words to their songs. Among them was Ned Washington, who rests here in the mausoleum at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. Ned Washington teamed up with Lee Harline to write the words to When You Wish Upon a Star. As mentioned, the song won them the Oscar. He would also be nominated for writing the lyrics to Baby Mine from Dumbo. Ned Washington was a member of the Songwriters Hall of Fame and was named a Disney legend in 2001. The next generation of great Disney songwriters came to us in the form of two brothers. We're at Hillside Cemetery now in Culver City, where rests Robert Sherman. With younger brother Richard, the Sherman brothers are responsible for some of the catchiest and most beloved tunes ever to come out of Disney. In the 1960s, they were the lyrical voice of voice. They're perhaps best remembered for their work on Mary Poppins, including the songs Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious,
It's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Chim Chim Cheree, which won them the Oscar,
Chim chippity chim chippity chim chim chiree.
and Feed the Birds, which would become Walt Disney's favorite song.
The birds so bad.
That same year, they wrote the song It's a Small World After All for the World's Fair, the most performed and most gets stuck in your head song of all time. Other productions they wrote songs for include Bedknobs and Broomsticks, The Jungle Book, and The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. The Sherman brothers were portrayed in the 2013 film Saving Mr. Banks and became Disney legends in 1990. We're back again at Forest Lawn in the Hollywood Hills, in the Sheltering Hills section. Here lies Buddy Baker. The Sherman brothers wrote the songs for Winnie the Pooh, but another Disney legend wrote the score for Winnie the Pooh films, Buddy Baker. He arrived at Disney in the 50s, helping write music for various television productions. Other of his feature film work includes The Fox and the Hound. Later in life, he became music director for Wet Enterprises, aka Disney Imagineering, crafting music for many of Disney's
Suck it, dude.
productions. Perhaps his most beloved tune from the Disney parks is Grim Grinning Ghosts
Harris.
from the Haunted Mansion, with lyrics
Okay.
by Exitensi.
No,
Baker spent his final years mentoring.
Look, I didn't like it, but where's
Was named
It
a Disney
was.
legend.
Paula was right here.
I'm not even
Late
dickhead.
80s, early 90s were known as a renaissance era for Disney animation. And much of
I
that
said
is
it was a
owed to the brilliant
volcano.
work of our next songwriter, Howard Ashman, who rests here at Oheb Shalom
Yeah,
Memorial
yes,
Park.
you
in
saw
Baltimore,
50.
Maryland.
Yeah,
Ashman
totally.
was a lyricist
Cool.
who collaborated
Good
with
You as
musician
well?
Alan Menken to write songs for the movie that would turn around
Should
Disney's
be,
fortunes in 1989